Is the LDK game worth buying? That's the question I want to hopefully answer in today's video looking at this. This is the LDK game and I got sent this by Banggood for completely free for review, so I've got to give a massive thank you to them. I have looked online and have seen countless reviews of this very, very tiny Game Boy inspired system. And in those videos, they go into great depth of what they include. But a question a lot of you are asking is whether it's worth buying or not. And in today's video, I'm hoping I can answer that for you. So it comes in this tiny box. I really like this box. Not only is it an Apple style box, so you can actually lift it up and then it very slowly slides down. Now obviously there's nothing in here, so it doesn't slide down as easily, but I love boxes like this and it has this really nice premium feel. 64-bit OS, which I think is running on some form of Linux. As well as that, this does have capabilities of running Game Boy Advance, NES, Super NES, and the Sega game consoles. Now this includes stuff like Master System and Game Gear, as well as, of course, Mega Drive. Now, it also does accept micro SD, which is very useful, and I'm going to explain a bit about that later. But possibly the most important thing here is this. It is 0 to 3 sad onions. You can tell I watch a lot of Ashens. And that's really it. Apart from the charging cable, you just get an AV cable, which is only red, white, and yellow. There is not a composite cable or HDMI here. This runs completely off of this port up here. So first things first, I want to point out the negatives with this system because I do have a couple. And I think it's only fair because I think the positives outweigh the negatives with this system. So looking at the back of the system, you're probably wondering, well, what am I pointing out here? Well, if you were to look at this lengthways, I don't know if you can make it out or not, but the battery compartment here is very slightly raised. And it's something I've noticed, and you definitely feel it while playing. This is something that you can't really see very well on camera, but when you have it in your hands, your fingers, of course, are going to be around here. So you're going to feel this a lot. You're going to feel like there's a little bump going up there. Now, this should, in theory, be flush with the system. And as you guys can see there, it's not. And it's something that I'm not sure whether this is just my system or if this is a kind of universal thing. And while it's a little bit annoying, it's not really a major issue. The other thing I wanted to point out here is this. Now, this is the volume rocker. Yes, you actually have an old school Game Boy style volume rocker. And now this, great, very nostalgic. But what I will say, when I got it out of the box, this thing was stuck, so I could only have it at full volume by putting it all the way down or very low volume. I couldn't actually turn it off without messing around with it a little bit. I do have one more negative, but we'll get to that once the system's turned on. So on top of the system, you have L and R, which is a big step up from the original Game Boy, which had neither of those. And also on the front, you have 4 face buttons. Now these remind me very much of the SNES. I really like these. While they don't have a major click to them, they do feel really nice. As well as that, the D-pad on the system is absolutely brilliant. I really quite like it. Now, this is using a rocker style system, so as you can see, it kind of goes all the way around, very much like the original NES. And on the front here, you have Start and Select. You also get a menu button, which is used in certain emulators, and you also get a brightness button. Now, you can press this multiple times to change the brightness. Now, they do have a landscape version, which I'm going to show here. Now, this does, of course, have an analog stick, which I would really like to review. So if you're watching Banggood, hit me up. So turning on the system, and this is what we see. Now, I have turned the brightness down here so the camera can pick it up better. You are not going to see this when you buy this system. I have upgraded the firmware. Now, I'm going to leave a link in the description below for ETA Prime's video, because he did a really in-depth video on how you can get the best firmware for the system, which includes more emulators and built-in homebrew games. And that is what I'm using here. Something quite interesting, on the back of the system here, you guys can see, of course, the battery slot. Now, this battery is oddly very similar to the old Nokia batteries, but something quite interesting is that the micro SD is here. Now, I've put 128 gigs in here. It's a little bit overkill, if I'm honest, but it also does have another micro SD card slot right here. So what you could do is put a smaller 16GB SD card in here where you could flash the new firmware to it, and inside here you could have, let's say, a 32 or 64GB micro SD with all your games on it. Now, if I'm honest, when buying a small handheld like this, you weren't really expecting it to be able to do much. Well, I was completely blown away. Not only does this console run all the way up to around PS1, where it starts to dip pretty badly in performance, but it also allows you to play homebrew games, as well as games that you can transfer from your PC, including Doom, which is fully working as long as you have the original WAD file, and also Duke Nukem 3D, one of my favourites. But the one that surprised me the most here has to be Quake. It can run Quake at full speed, and it blows my mind that this system can do that. Not only that, but it can in theory run Quake 2 as well. Now, it does not run fantastically, but it can run it. And that absolutely blows my mind, that a tiny system like this can do it pretty well. So I want to show you why I think that this is incredibly worth it. I'm going to start with Doom. We can load this up, and as you guys can see, it loads pretty quickly. We can even turn the volume right up here. Now, as you guys can see, it runs flawlessly. But not only that, it also allows us to load save games. So I can load up my save game from a couple of days ago, and you guys can see that this runs absolutely flawlessly. So what I'm actually going to do is start a new game here, and I'm just going to go for, that's fine. It gives you an idea of what the sound's like. Now, I do have this turned down to 70% volume so it doesn't crackle, but to be honest, that's not really an issue here. Now, I will say, this feels great to play on a handheld like this. Now, you can play this on mobile, but of course, you're limited to only being able to play with a touchscreen, which I do not recommend. So if we were to come in here, I can then come in here and take these guys out. Now, you can also strafe by holding down the B button. Let's take that guy out. And then you can also run by holding down the Y button here. Let's take this guy out here. Now, of course, I am playing this through a viewfinder, so I'm not going to be as good as I would be playing this normally, but you can strafe, which I really like. Now, I thought I'd be limited by playing this on a tiny handheld like this, but to be honest, I've been playing this quite a lot, and I've been enjoying myself a ton with this. Oh, I didn't dodge in time. Damn it. Personally, I would be more than happy playing this on this system. It's one of these things that is really fun to play. And as long as you have the original WAD files, this is the full game. So to exit, just go down to start, and then you can exit the entire game. Now, something's quite interesting. You can press Y to quit to DOS. So we're going to do that right now. So then it should kick us out, and we're back to the main menu. I also wanted to show you Quake very, very quickly. I wanted to show you how well this runs so you guys can just see how brilliant this is. Now, this game is quite dark, so it might be quite hard to pick up on here. But as you can see, so as you saw there, bloody fantastic. I am blown away by that. So one of the main reasons you would probably want this system is to emulate your old games. Now, you do have a large selection of emulators on this system. Now, I will say the emulators that do come on this firmware aren't exactly the ones that I would have chosen, and there are some things it struggles with, such as quite high-end GBA games and SNES games such as Yoshi's Island. But you do have stuff here like, let's say, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance SP, you have Game Boy Color, Intellivision, MAME, you have Mega Drive here, which I play an awful lot because I like playing my Streets of Rage game. You also have NES, Neo Geo Pocket, you have PS1, which, as I said before, I wouldn't generally recommend playing because it runs at an awful frame rate, probably around 7 FPS. SNES, which is great to play on here, apart from, as I said, the high-end games. So what I'm going to do here is jump into a Game Boy Color game. I'm personally going to go for Pokemon. So we're going to jump in into Pokemon Yellow. This is a game that I grew up playing and absolutely adore. So as you guys can see in here, this runs absolutely flawlessly. Now, I will say, playing this game on this system feels amazing. Not only does it feel like you're playing an original Game Boy, but also the fact that it's also yellow. So it kind of feels like some form of limited edition Pikachu yellow Game Boy. So before we actually went into the game, I wanted to show you this button here, which opens up the menu. Now this is going to differ from every single emulator on the system, but if we go into settings, we can actually change a few of these options. Now, something that's really cool here is if you're playing a Game Boy original game that's not in color, you can select a palette. Now, that is awesome because you can select a color palette for an original black and white Game Boy game. Another thing that absolutely blows my mind here is you can actually simulate ghosting. So if you wanted to experience the original Game Boy as close as you could in theory do that. But of course, I'm absolutely fine playing like this. You can also, in this same menu, save and load states. So I want to talk quickly about emulation. Now, this is kind of a very iffy topic. Some people like it, some people absolutely despise it. Now, I generally play games that I own. Now, I own a crap ton of Game Boy games and Mega Drive games, and unfortunately, they're all in my old house because I don't have enough room where I currently live. So having a system like this, where I can emulate my games wherever I go, is amazing. So as you guys can see, this game runs flawlessly. You can expect every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game to work perfectly, which is amazing. And then we're going to jump over to Mega Drive. I think it's safe to say that Streets of Rage 2 is possibly one of my favourite ever games. It's definitely in my top 10, so the fact that I can play it on here is awesome. So we're going to play as Blaze here, and we're going to jump into the first level. So yeah, as you guys can see, this game runs at a constant 60, absolutely flawless experience on here. The sound sounds great coming from the little speakers on here. I will say they are very, very loud, and I think the speakers do a great job. So as I said at the start of the video, I do have one more negative. Now that is the screen. So if we were to pause here, you guys can see the screen's really bright. It's very, very nice to look at. It's got great colors. What I'm seeing right now looks fantastic. Very, very vibrant. But one thing I will say is that viewing angles are pretty bad. Now, as you guys can see there, if I was to tilt, yeah, it goes quite easily, especially on the vertical. Horizontally, it does really well. But if you were to hold this at the wrong angle, it really does quite dim the screen. What I will say is it did take me a while to hold it in the right position, because at first I was thinking, wow, this looks really, really dim. But if you hold it at like this angle, it looks fantastic. This is one of the best looking handheld screens I've ever seen. But unfortunately, it does have this one little issue. Now, this may not affect you, but for me, it was something that I wanted to point out here. So we're going to exit here, and I'm going to jump into the last emulator. See, as you guys can hear, this does not run great at all. So what we're going to do is jump out of here, and we're going to jump into a different game. Let's jump into some Mario All-Stars. And as you guys can see, this runs absolutely great. There's no issues here at all. So yeah, unfortunately, it definitely is hit and miss with this emulator. Now, what I would say is I hope they add the ability to add different emulators, because there are SNES emulators out there that are a lot better. And I'm pretty sure that this little system could run those games quite well. So that is the LDK game. As someone who grew up playing the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance when I was at school, I absolutely love this system. It feels very premium. Apart from that one battery compartment issue I have, it feels great to hold. And with the newly released LDK landscape, I'm guessing that is going to feel even better in the hand. If you want to play Doom on the go or Quake as well, I think this is absolutely fantastic. And for me, it beats playing it on something like a phone where you don't have physical controls. I want to give a major thank you to Banggood because they have been absolutely fantastic by sending me this, and I will be leaving a link in the description below so you can go check it out for yourself. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, but until next time, that's me, out. Bye guys.